So I don't even want to go.
How are you? Good, how are you?
Stove clapping.
150 members of that is times. Oh, the first time he said, I have COVID. I'm like, that's the control line. He said, oh, the C doesn't mean like.
Oh.
How quickly you forget.
Yeah, I've, since I was here last, I've tested negative twice. Twice or three times? Three times. So
I got the vaccine, so.
you can't get one until 3 months after you have it.
Oh, I didn't have it, but
Oh, I know.
yeah. So you're safe though for 90 days, right?
Who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, looks like.
We're ready to start. Got his vigil. Here for a few hours.
My wife calls it my ghetto cup.
All right. Oh, geez. Okay. Not in the mic. Gabby, are we good to start? Audio visual wise? Is Gabby at her station? Let me just check.
Hey, Colin, is there still somebody at the door watching for any latecomers?
I think David might be.
Yeah.
Okay, oh, good. Hi.
Hi.
All right, welcome everyone. Welcome to the 6th Erie Landfill Task Force meeting. This is our 6th of 6 meeting, if all goes well. And I expect that it will. I'm feeling a sense of, I don't know, a little bit more lightness in the air and some excitement that we're close to being finished with this phase of the process. And I'm really glad that you're all here. I think this is the first time in a while that we're all here. So I'm going to ask everyone to make sure not to leave before we take a task force picture at the end. So
You didn't put that in the pre-meeting.
you're welcome to opt out if you can, but we'll Photoshop you in. Okay, well, welcome everyone. My name is Morgan Lomley. I'm your neutral third-party facilitator for this task force. And we'll get started with our meeting here. Want to acknowledge everyone's here. This is our 6th meeting. We have a lot to cover in our short 2 hours, but I appreciate just, and I'll say it a lot between now and 8:30, just everyone's investment in this process and the fact that we got to this point. It's something to celebrate. Thank you for being here. Our agenda for our meeting today, it's October 1st, Tuesday, October 1st. Our meeting's from 6:30 to 8:30 tonight. If anyone is joining on the phone as a member of the public, we welcome you and we're glad that you're here. We have relatively fewer members of the public here today joining the meeting, but thank you for members of the public joining. We have some treats, we have beverages, and we also have comment cards. If any of you chooses to provide a public comment, those are welcome in written form. Our agenda for today, some of these items look familiar to you. We will do introductions of the task force members and the Town of Erie staff and Waste Connection staff present today. We're reviewing our agenda. As we always do, we'll review and reflect on recent public comments. And we did receive some public comments that we'll spend a little bit of time addressing. We don't have a formal procedure for addressing those within these meetings, but there are items that Waste Connections is prepared to address and some items that will clarify and provide some correct information around. So we'll spend some time on the public comments. And the 2 big pieces for today's meeting, we'll discuss and finalize the land use recommendations, the part kind of 3 of 3 parts of the land use recommendation related to the southeastern part of the Waste Connections property and their desired to expand their permitted footprint into that part. That conversation, we ended a little bit early at our last meeting because of time, and we'll look to finish that. We have about half an hour on the agenda for that. And the last part of the meeting, we'll discuss the community benefits. So everyone on this task force contributed to the document that you saw in email. It's in front of you as well. That's a compilation of the community's desires for public benefits and land use amenities on the landfill property and adjacent to it. So our objective with that is to check and see if anything's missing and make sure it reflects the desire of the task force on behalf of the Erie community and the surrounding neighborhoods. And then last, we have some next steps. We have a council meeting coming up on October 22nd, and we'll discuss next steps to get ready for that. Let's do introductions. I'll ask the task force to introduce yourself and the neighborhood or area of Erie that you represent. We'll start with Jerry.
Hi,
And speak into your mic, please.
I'm Sherry Kuntz and I represent the Vista Ridge area.
Jeff Deacon, also Vista Ridge.
Michael Howard, Erie Highlands.
Lisa Huff, Erie Highlands.
Cheryl Ellis Rock, Road 6.
Scott Wood with Vista Ridge.
Cassie Yale, Vista Point.
Christina Schust, Ranch Egg Estates.
Great, thank you. And it's so nice that we're all here for our last meeting. Town of Erie, David, would you like to introduce yourself? And
I'm David Frank, the Director of Environmental Services for the town of Erie. And also here tonight, though she's still manning the door, is Erica Thorley, our Sustainability Manager.
and we have Gabby Ray with us as
Oh, yes.
well. Gabby's the Director of Communications and Community Engagement and managing this, the whole process of getting this on the web.
Making the whole thing happen, really.
And Weaver and Waste Connections, we'll start with you, Dalton.
Dalton, now it's, Consultants.
Brian Dornbos with Peterson Energy.
And
Randy Turville with Waste Connections, District Manager of Front Range Landfill.
And as a reminder for everyone sitting there, if you're speaking, please just take a second, come up to the mic so people joining virtually can hear you. I'm Morgan Lomley. Again, I'm facilitating the task force. I'm joined by Colin Johnson from Kearns and West as well, who sends you emails almost every day. And I know everyone opens them and reads them, so thank you. Okay, meeting participation guidelines. These are items that we've adhered to throughout the course of our kind of 6-7 month process and that have helped us reach the recommendations that we're discussing today. So as a reminder, we're remaining open-minded, we're interacting respectfully with each other, we're staying on track with our agenda, working on the issues at hand and tabling those that we can address later. We're participating in an active and focused manner, and we're committing to the success of this landfill task force process. We're sharing our values, our views, our interests, not our positions. And again, if I hear positions, we'll try to work on reframing those as interests, and that's how we seek our understanding between each other. We're listening actively, listening to understand. We're not repeating or revisiting resolved issues, and we trust that if those haven't been resolved, we can resolve them at a future time. And we're providing clear and specific recommendations. That last piece is especially important. This is our, it's nice to have moved along in the process. It's sadly our last meeting, and we're really focused on the recommendations and reaching agreement so that council can understand the viewpoints of all of you all at their October 22nd meeting. And again, welcome to other members of the public who joined. You know the drill. I recognize your faces and I'm glad you're here. And we have beverages and comment cards and snacks. Okay, meeting 5 action items. There were a number and I'll run through them. And like I said, we have a couple things, not necessarily off the agenda, but a couple things that are updates that are folded within these action items that we'll get to as well. Okay, so meeting 5 action items. These are items we all committed to completing between the last meeting and today. The first, identify potential community benefits and share them with the facilitation team. You all did that. Thank you. It was a lot of work. Send questions about the proposed Front Range Landfill Eastern expansion and water tank relocation to the facilitation team. We'll address those questions today if we haven't already over email. Develop draft language describing the process for assessing the abandoned well in the horseshoe-shaped notch that's on the western side, and then ensuring the water tank relocation avoids contamination from oil and gas facilities. And we have folks here today to share that and just help us understand what the process is around that. Confirm the amount of remaining acreage on the Front Range landfill property outside of the permitted boundary that could be used for community benefits. Dalton will address that as well. Develop a sequence plan to show the ultimate build out and closure of the western portion of the site. Those are in front of you. You got them over email too. We're not going to go into depth discussing those, but they give you visuals for how the potential build out could look. So if you have questions, please bring those up. Otherwise, those are for your information. Review the state regs around developing water infrastructure near an oil and gas facility. We'll get to that today as well. And the last 2 items, just process items of a meeting 5 summary and revising the recommendations based on our last meeting. So. Let's go through the public comments and then we can revisit some of the pieces in the action items that we have more information about. Oh. Public comments. Okay. So as you all know, you've committed as part of this process to read those public comments. I'll share those for the record here. And if there's any reflections on those, I invite the task force to speak up. There were a number, I've summarized them just for in the interest of time. There were a number of public comments related to concerns around the intersection of Erie Parkway and County Road 7. And with more potential hauler traffic, with just more traffic in general, because of the development of Erie, there are concerns that the existing traffic and road configuration won't meet the kind of the future use. And what we've learned from the town's transportation staff is there's a real process to both analyzing potential concerns, collecting data to understand what can be done, and then prioritizing that within the town's transportation master plan. And so for those concerns and other concerns about new traffic, revised hauler routes, just new patterns that people and haulers and businesses move around the town, that's the process that the town follows. And they really do analysis, understanding data, and then looking at it from a safety lens. And then that's the way that projects get prioritized. So it's not a hard and fast answer around what will happen to that intersection, but it addresses some of the concerns around if there is a problem in the future, how is that problem addressed? And the town does have a process. Cheryl?
I have a question. David, maybe you can answer. Can you give me the names of the people that are involved in that with the town of Erie so we can communicate with them further?
Yeah. And then we'll note as an action item to share that with the task force.
Yeah, briefly. Our transportation and mobility division manager he's fairly new. I'm gonna have to look up his name real quick because it just escaped me. His first name is John.
John.
But I want to get you his last name as well.
Peruzzi.
Thank you. John Ferruzzi. As well as Miguel. Who actually came and spoke at I believe our second meeting.
Yep.
Our two primary transportation. And Gabby, if you can pipe up, I know they're in the process of hiring a third member of that staff. Have they gotten someone on board yet?
Oh, not yet. It's gonna be a transportation engineer, but that person has not been hired yet.
So that's the entirety of that division.
By any chance, did Gabby spell John's last name?
We'll share that. We'll email it to you.
We'll send that as an email.
And we'll do
with,
that this
with their
week.
contact information. I'm
And
sure.
generally speaking, or not, but the town is committed to hearing concerns and addressing that. And the place to put those concerns is within the recommendations that will go to council. So if there are concerns around these intersections, council, I'm sure, would like that to be part of recommendations, and those will be included. So.
Hey, Morgan?
Yep.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to clarify something because I'm a little concerned that people might have taken a comment I made previously out of context that the town of Erie doesn't have the budget to pay for all of these things all at once. The general development process is that this is a pay-as-you-go. Most of Colorado is pay-as-you-go because we don't have unlimited funds to build every road to maximum capacity at any given time. So what Erie does is between development partners and town funds, budget for improvements as they are needed. So it's not that Erie doesn't have the money to pay for these improvements. It's that the money for a Highway 7 Erie Parkway improvement, for example, would be scheduled to coincide with work being done at that intersection, whether it's the oil and gas development coming in or the expansion of the neighborhoods nearby or another school or whatever happens there. That's the way almost all road development is done in Colorado, that it's done coincident with the development and the use of that area, not necessarily the planning of the area.
And-
So there's a master plan, but then there is also the development plans that come up as work gets proposed. So when a developer buys a parcel of land and comes to planning commission and the council to start saying, I'd like to do a neighborhood or a commercial development or what have you. That's when the negotiation starts, first with staff with the planning division, and then eventually to the planning commission, and then to the council to determine what a road profile looks like, who's going to pay for it, what the timing is. That's also part of the reason that something like County Road 7, or excuse me, Highway 7, State Highway 7, or Erie Parkway expands a mile at a time. It's because that portion of a section is under development, but the rest of the section is not under development for another 18 months, 2 years, what have you.
And similarly with all the utilities, the
Yeah.
water lines, sanitary sewer, storm sewer, electric communications, those are all typically under the roadway. So you're gonna have to tear that roadway up to facilitate that development. And obviously, it would be awesome if we could run water all the way out to I-25 and south. It's gonna be a decade or so process.
Thanks
Um,
for clarifying that. Cheryl, is it specific to this comment or around
Yeah,
the
well,
transportation staff?
As far as, so the transportation part of it, because the master plan, once it's set, is pretty much the
I
vision,
want to
right?
pause that. I think this is a question around how highway road improvement projects
Okay.
are identified and funded and analyzed. So that's something Miguel and John will
Okay.
talk to you all day
Okay.
about. I'm sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you.
And we'll share, I think and Miguel did share a helpful email with us outlining that process. I'll confirm with Miguel that we can share that with you and the contact info. Lisa?
I did notice, in researching Michael's comment, public comment,
Mhm.
and looking back at all the other prior agreements that we have, Town of Erie and the landfill, there was specific language in there about the routes they could and couldn't take. So I'm assuming that that'll be updated after we get through this process. Because in those agreements, and the best I could tell, the most recent one says preferred driving down Highway 7 to Sheridan to 4.
Mm.
And they also said in one of those agreements that not to use CR7. So I just wanted to make sure that we're going to update all those.
So would the task force support, I guess not opening those back up, but revisiting those
Little
to
amendment
be
to it.
consistent? Yeah. Yeah. Or sorry, revising, yeah. We'll get the wording right and you'll see it on paper, but any objection to making sure
I-
those two are consistent?
I'm not willing to commit.
No, okay, thank you.
Well,
Yep,
these
Randy?
are the, and I want to hear what Randy says about the most recent agreements.
Yep,
Those agreements for Ranch Eggs and County Road 7 and County Road 6 are a part of our permit. That was originally set up when they went for the permit before we ever owned it, before Republic did. When it was initially permitted, that agreement was in place. That agreement won't change. It might be updated with other routes on it, but we continue to this day to keep traffic off of those roads.
Well, it was 1996, then I think 2004 was an amendment,
Mhm.
and that was updated then, I think, and then 2006 maybe.
But
So-
it's updated, but that prior agreement is in all of those.
Okay,
it could be a note too, just flagging that if these recommendations are adopted based on it or incorporated into a new permit, there could be an effort to make sure things are consistent and not outdated for the Ranch Eggs neighborhood. Yeah. So lots of questions around how transportation projects are brought to the attention of the town, planned for and managed. So that's a follow-up action item that we can have just to give you all the information you need to be vocal if you feel like something needs to be brought up to the town. Going down the list of public comments, there was a comment around enforcement on 6 and concerns with existing enforcement. And that's a theme we've heard throughout the meeting. And we've heard that Waste Connections is committed to doing everything it's already doing and open to doing more if there are problems with enforcement. There was a question around the number of vehicles that pass through Erie Parkway to Highway 7. We don't have the answer to that right now, but the transportation staff would. So they have a lot of homework, you guys. There was a concern about if the blue jungle, so to speak, is relocated to the northeastern part of the property, there are potential fire hazards. And the commitment from Waste Connections that we heard Dalton share today was being consistent with code, and any new development or a maintenance yard or storage facility would be consistent with the the code. Of course, yeah, but in the mic.
We just wanted to clarify as well that any trucks that are gonna be parked at that storage yard, we don't park them full of trash, and so that would
Mhm.
mitigate, you know, some of that fire hazard there. Would they be empty trucks? If there were containers, they'd be empty, because I could see if they were full of trash, that would be a fire concern, so.
And
But
fire's a real concern, but
Oh, yeah.
it sounds like you're aware and committed to following the code, yeah, on behalf of Waste Connections. So that one's that. There was a relatively longer comment with concerns around expanding the permitted boundary within Waste Connections property and the perceptions that neighbors have opposed. And in that, there was one piece in that comment that indicate that with the perception that the landfill only had a 20-year lifespan. That is incorrect. We've confirmed that. And Dalton, I think you can come back and clarify that as well. It'd be nice to hear it in Waste Connections words. Yep.
Sure,
know what I
the
mean? Yeah.
comment had suggested that the permit had a 20-year life, and the original permit and the one we have now, none of them have had a time-bound element to it. It's been based off the airspace like we've all talked about before. So I think everybody in here knows that. It's just making sure we keep everybody else informed.
And that permit is from the state as well, right? Not from the town of Erie?
So the permit comes from the town of Erie. We have a engineering, design and operations plan, which pretty much lays out how you build your liner and things like that. And that comes from the state. So it's kind of a joint effort. The local jurisdiction at the end of the day is the who you get your permit from. So in this case, it would be Erie. It was originally Weld County before the landfill was annexed. So.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Yep.
Regarding the permit and the safety for fire, is it Mountain View Fire Department that would be responsible for that?
I believe that
Okay.
is our local primary. Yep.
Okay, okay. And then what backup would be, oh gosh, I'm wrong.
We've
So,
got a multi-county agreement.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
each,
Okay,
they
good,
all back
good.
each other up.
okay.
So the town does not have the ability, though, to rescind that permit, correct?
No, that's not how it, like I said, the way it's set up now would be like we've talked about before, you
Right,
fill
but
till you reach those top.
I just, in addressing the comment that was made, I want to make sure we're clear because I've clarified it with you guys before. And I think this is an education issue for the public that our communications staff of the town need to do a better job of making sure the public is informed. Of course, that requires you to actually read this stuff that comes out from the town, but we can't control that. But as far as, they need to understand, it's not the town, it's not within the town's purview to say we're yanking the permit. So our job is to come up with the best win solution for everybody.
There's an issue of vested rights. You know, whether it's the landfill, any other business, private residence, you don't want your local government to have that authority.
But I think for Kearns West, this goes back to comments from the first meeting we had, and I was on Lakeshore Drive in Chicago, driving there, I tried to make this point. I had a real estate agent in 2002 tell me the landfill is almost done.
Mhm.
Yeah. That, and we're gonna hear hundreds, if not thousands of stories from residents that is the case. So I think it's incumbent upon the town to make sure that we are broadcasting loud and clear what Scott just said, that there isn't a date specific. It's a permit that has been issued and that's a done deal.
It's a permit to operate a business on private property.
Correct.
Mhm. And that's something that is, you'll see this when it comes to you in a couple days, the draft recommendations packet. There are reflections of desires to just encourage the town to do the best job it possibly can to get the right information out. And hopefully the task force webpage has answered some frequently asked questions, but I think that could be front and center in the recommendations as a theme throughout, that there's a lot of misinformation, or has been. Hopefully we've cleared up a significant amount of it around the landfill. There's always work to be done, and just the continued effort beyond this process to get the right information out there, I'm hearing is a priority. So,
And I
Chris,
think
hold on, let's
sorry.
Chris.
Oh, no, I was just, did they just lie to you then?
Yes.
Did he really?
Well, and I
Yeah.
think what
It was, I mean, I'll
They do.
put names on it. It was the sales rep for KB Homes when
Same thing with.
Grandview was being built. I was
Yeah,
house
Horton
number
did the same
7
thing.
and
Mhm.
we were straight up told the house behind us wouldn't block our view of the mountains and the landfill was going away.
Well, and I think what a lot of they've claimed is, if you guys remember from your tour, there's the 3 landfills. You have I guess it's really 4, but they already closed one, Denver Regional North. Denver Regional South, which we closed a couple of years ago, and now.
December of 2020, I think it
Yep,
was.
December of 2020. And then there's this, so a landfill in theory was closing. It wasn't the one that
Fun.
was in your backyard.
Our
So-
realtor told us we'd never see the landfill over the houses on the block in Vista Ridge. And now you guys could put a ski lift on it. But I think,
That's the amenities.
I think coming into this, I think everybody's aware that I don't love living near the landfill, but that's my choice. But I think Randy and his staff have gone out of their way to be available to different neighborhoods, to different groups, to educate them, to invite them to see the landfill. And there's only so much you can do. Again, you can't require people to read the stuff the town sends out. And people are gonna have opinions that just are based on their opinion, not on fact. And so, I mean, even though I'm not Mr. Landfill guy, I have to appreciate what Randy and his staff have done and continue to do to try and educate the people around them to do the best they can to be a good neighbor. So
Love the flashing light. That just gave all of us on Road 6 a big high.
Well, and I see nodding heads and Randy, I'm neutral, you know, my interest is process. You all decide the outcomes, but Waste Connections' commitment to this process, Randy, your openness and transparency and commitment to doing the best job you and your team can possibly do really shines through. And I think the tone of these individuals and the task force and the information coming out has changed drastically because of that commitment. So thank you. Yeah. And thanks for the pizza.
Yeah, thanks
No,
for
and
dinner.
we certainly thank you, everybody here for all their time. It's quite an investment of time to do something like
Yeah.
this, and we certainly appreciate it.
All right, well, we're not done yet.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, better yet now.
And Peggy, you're here with us, Peggy, and we don't have a formal procedure to follow, but Peggy did ask 5 questions in the comments and we have time to answer those. Some of them are relatively quick. And this is the last chunk of comments that I'll get through and then we'll offer last reflections and we'll move into other items. But Peggy, you asked, what is a Raptor stand? And does someone on the task force want to answer that question? Jeff, that was your suggestion.
Those are the, they look like light poles that have a flat platform on top. And it's for eagles and hawks to nest on. Broomfield's got a lot of them. We don't have a whole lot, but we've got a beaver protected area down in the Coal Creek. So I think it was one of my recommendations that we start supporting the raptors that are all around our area.
That's awesome. I didn't know thanks for asking that, Peggy.
Sometimes
Yeah.
they're just a T, but
Mhm.
most often they're the platform because that's what big birds like to.
Yeah, because they're
Awesome.
losing their habitat with all the prairie dogs being
Yeah.
mowed over. So, okay, good.
A lot of communities will place cameras on them so you can see them come and return to their nest every year and have babies. It's really great.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot, Peggy, but you're our number 1 fan. Is there an estimate of the methane currently produced? Yes, that's publicly reported and
Yeah, we reported and the town has a
Mhm.
study as well. So.
and I Dalton or David can help you understand where to find that. How does the landfill affect weather and climate? I think that's a big topic and that information is out there too. Is there anything you can share today in 30 seconds or less or where that
That's
information
it.
can be found?
Weather on a hyper-localized level, obviously, there's going to be effects on wind. I doubt you have a huge effect on precip, but
And not the heat island you would get from a big parking lot or. something
certainly
like
not.
that.
The CO2 equivalent emissions from the landfill are represent about a third of the total emissions for the town of Erie. So roughly on par with all of the residential homes. So heating, lights, all your, watching TV. That's about an equivalent CO2 effect. Obviously, it's going to be CO2 emissions from power generation and burning natural gas at your home, whereas the emissions from the landfill are primarily methane, a more potent but shorter lived greenhouse gas. It's probably beyond the scope of this meeting to get into deep climate science at this point, but that kind of gives you a relative sense of scale. The trash component going into the landfill from Erie residents is fairly small. It's, I'm gonna guess, less than 5% of your total waste comes from residents of Erie. So it's a outportioned source of emissions for the town, but obviously we're taking waste from a lot of communities. So it's a regional
Mhm.
waste effect. So
There's a lot more out there to help people understand that. Fourth question, please explain the photo simulations of vantage points Waste Connections has offered to help walk individuals through what those mean. We won't do it today, but there's an offer on the table for that. And then where will the Erie underpass be? And Jeff, I think this was something you mentioned in your community benefits ideas too, of making sure that the Erie underpass is connected somehow to access.
So if it comes to be,
Mhm.
it was part of the plan, the evolving plans for Erie Parkway. So this started about 10 years ago and has continued to evolve as needs have evolved and as plans have evolved along Erie Parkway. But one of the proposals was to have an underpass somewhere on Erie Parkway. I'm blanking on the name of the neighborhood that's right across from the high school now.
Westerly.
Westerly, thank you. So somewhere along that Westerly or the lot to the east of Westerly, which would also become Westerly eventually, to underpass.
Northwesterly and southwesterly.
Yeah, exactly. To connect points south of Erie Parkway, basically to the high school.
Yes.
And based on traffic simulations and everything else, an underpass was proposed. I know at the time there
It's
was.
in the works. I
it?
can't, yeah.
Okay.
The Northwesterly specifically is still a pre-preliminary plat. So those final details haven't been ironed out, but it's way outside of my wheelhouse. But yeah,
Yeah.
I know those conversations are happening and that is
Okay.
proposed.
And so that was my only point in bringing that up, was to make sure that whatever, we're talking about lots of trails and bike paths and everything on the landfill. As we're talking about those, and then community trail connections through Westerly, let's just make sure everything lines up so that we don't wind up with a major path from, say, the high school to single track trails on the landfill being disconnected and people having to take surface streets to connect between two trails.
So connectivity
Yeah.
is important. Okay, so that's it for comments, and thank you for just supporting our work to address those. I feel like if one person asks them, many more community members either watching this or reading the summary might benefit from the answers too. And we've tried to make this an open process where we do make space to answer any community concerns, and then that helps you all understand just where people are at as well. So that took a little bit more time than it usually does, but I think it was important. Any last reflections on the public comments we heard? Okay. The next item we have to discuss is coming full circle on this land use recommendation. There's a draft recommendation out there. What we'll want to discuss today is the desire that Waste Connections has to expand their permitted boundary to operate the landfill into the southeastern portion. And so if you're following on the slide in front of us, it's, you can see where the yellow line expands into or away from that southeastern kind of corner. There's two outstanding information pieces that folks had asked about. One is the notch on the western side, and the second is just the relative public safety regarding water quality if those water tanks are moved. And so I wanted to ask Dalton to speak a little bit more about the process. Not so much the process, but the thought that goes into capping the oil and gas well on the western notch, and then the safety procedures, and then the ongoing monitoring and the commitment to maybe do more if there are concerns. Because right now, the way the recommendations stand is that there is general support for expanding within the notch, but there are concerns with the safety of covering that with landfill waste and the potential implications if there's a leak there. And a lot of that's based on the past and things that you have all observed the oil and gas industry doing in a variety of different situations. So it's justified, and there are concerns, and Dalton can help us understand a little bit more.
Yeah, no, I'll keep it real short and sweet. As we kind of heard, or during the introductions, we have somebody who's more knowledgeable than I am, and we've heard everybody's concern and realized this is something we'd wanted to dig in a little bit more. And so as we started researching, this well that in question is a plugged and abandoned well, which means it had been drilled and completed ran its life and has then now been plugged and abandoned. And so at this point, the state has a great resource, you know, to where all of these wells, especially a modern one like what this one is, all of the reports are submitted for it. So you can get a pretty good snapshot of the life of that well. You know, us with Ryan have taken a look at the original drilling and completion and then looking at the actual plug and abandonment, and everything that was done suggests it was done, you know, at or above standards. It was originally drilled by Noble Energy. It was plugged and abandoned by Extraction in 2019. And then, you know, all of this would suggest it's a good candidate for what we're trying to do here. I think, you know, moving forward, obviously, if we're going to do any work in that area, we're committed to doing some integrity type testing at the surface just to make sure what's, you know, kind of ground truth, what we've seen. If we come back with something that gives us or the state, you know, David at Erie, some heartburn, then at that point, we could look at some additional mitigation measures before we actually started putting liner over there. At this point, without physically, you know, doing that testing, rigging up, things like that, we just aren't going to have a better answer at this point in time. But we do want to let everybody know, we understand it's not a cowboy effort where you come out one morning and Randy's in a dozer and I'm rolling liner down and, you know, we just never see it again. I mean, it would have to be a very engineered, kind of thoughtful process. And at this point, we just hope to get the support of the group to go and start that process and see, you know, see what we can do out there and have the opportunity to really get working on it.
And to clarify, the process isn't just capping it, it's doing the work to attempt to cap it.
Well, and I get that.
It's capped, right?
Yeah, the well
It's
is
to
capped
cut-
below grade.
Understand the process to cover it. So.
Yeah.
And Ryan, is there anything else you'd like to share? And if you do, use a mic.
Switch.
And please introduce yourself again, just so we know.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ryan Dornbos. I work for Peterson Energy. I don't have much to add. Dalton did a great job kind of explaining the situation and how that well was drilled and abandoned just a few years ago. One detail that I think is probably a concern here is groundwater protection and how impacts from anything else could influence this well to be an issue. This well actually has surface casing, which is set before they drill the main part of the well that goes to the oil and gas, set quite a bit deeper than normal. It's set at about 1,000 feet deep. And it has cement on the backside all the way up to surface where they visually watch it return and make sure that it's all there. So I think, and Jason, you can correct me, I think the deepest water well, even in the vicinity, is around 300, 350 feet. So there's quite a bit of protection there. And that's before we even talk about how the well was plugged, which I'm happy to tell you whatever you'd like to know, but I don't want to get too far into the weeds if it's not something you're interested in.
And in my review, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Yes.
My review showed similar. This is a very high integrity well. I don't have a lot of concerns about this well in particular. It's not one that keeps me up at night. I guess my question would be, could there be engineered some method to, if need be, monitor this well into the distant future? 50 years from now, once it's under the trash, it's going to be very inaccessible. And who knows, it looks great today. It's up to current modern standards. Standards change. Might be in 2 generations, we're like, wow, back in 2019, they really didn't know what they were doing. They didn't think about this and this and this. Would there be any way to monitor and test the conditions at the wellhead once it's underneath the landfill?
I can get creative and come up with ways to do that, but I don't think, normally we're not so worried about trying to monitor something that's difficult to access. And even though incidents where something would fail and you'd have something express at surface are extremely rare, as we all know, they've happened. And generally it's an expression at surface that you see. So here we don't have that. Going off the cuff, being creative, if you laid some sort of a pipe or conduit or something that you could do soil vapor monitoring or even just monitor if there's anything coming out, that would be a probably low cost and effective way to just see what's happening. Other than that, yes, I don't have anything more
Yeah.
specialized.
Thank you,
and
Ryan.
that's-
And for the purpose of this conversation, it's not looking back on our past discussion. It's, are we accurately recording the concerns and the direction from the task force um, within the context of this recommendation? So right now, is the way the recommendation stands is there's general support for, yes, putting trash in that notch, expanding the permitted boundary to that notch, especially to make the landscape flow in an aesthetically pleasing way, but there are concerns based on what many of you have seen and experienced and been a part of in the past that perhaps this isn't safe. And those are perceptions, but they're real and they can be captured in the recommendation. So is there anything specific to the recommendation that we should add to capture directions, concerns, things like that? So we'll open it up right now. Yeah.
Has it been done at any other landfill? And if so, could we use that as why we're approving this? There's another landfill going on top of a capped well?
Yeah, I think it happens fairly frequently. I don't know if anyone's ever engineered some way to check up on the status of that well after the
Yeah,
fact.
that's not my question. I just want to know it has been done successfully. And so we're not like groundbreaking any new precedent.
So when I reached out to the state and said, what do you guys think? They said, yeah, it seems like a reasonable land use for a plugged and abandoned well.
Okay.
But David, you just stated that no one's done a follow-up? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I don't think anyone's ever engineered a way to monitor that well
Okay, it's
underneath the
kinda
landfill.
set it and forget it and hope nothing happens.
We do have,
Um,
I guess the caveat would be, there is the landfills, groundwater
Sure.
and gas monitoring. So I think what David was suggesting is there, some enhanced additional monitoring. So obviously we would find an issue when it would reach those points of protection, but is there something we can do to, kind of narrow in on the well itself? And which is, we're not here, as Morgan has said before, to create all the solutions, but I
Sure.
think that's the type of thing we'd like to work with, on a project like this. with somebody.
Groundwater monitoring, soil vapor monitoring, just a.
so the
a
monitoring,
tube
the
going in there. I
monitoring
think-
piece will be recorded. Cheryl,
Yes.
anything
I
else?
think that's pretty
Okay.
reasonable.
Yeah.
Chris, Cassie? No?
I would like to also add that if something unfortunate did occur in the future, my concern is related to the fact that extraction is no longer in business. So who's going to bear that cost?
Extraction is very much in business. Yeah. If in the future they go out of business, then that would probably fall to the state's orphaned well program.
Yeah, and that's something that is problematic. I know that's the way the world and the regulations work, but I believe that's problematic because it could end up imposing an additional cost on Waste Connections and on the town of Erie.
So the financial burden of,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, Jeff?
More a slide-based request. We've all been looking at these pictures for months at this point. But before they go to the council, I would love it if you could put like a red dot on the well that we're talking
Yeah,
about.
there you
An
go.
arrow, like
Okay.
this is the spot we're talking about, because
Good call.
if you're not familiar with it, these are a little opaque.
I know, and we've lived and breathed this for so long that our eyes glaze over. But in the packet, David, I bet we'll include some maps in addition to the recommendations. So
I think Jason can add a red dot.
yeah, Jason will take care of the red dot.
Yeah.
I mean, but
Anybody have a Sharpie? I'll put one on this.
Do it right.
if there are, the public information piece is a theme here. And if there are things that you feel like, even for us, we're having a hard time deciphering. I mean, I stare at these maps a lot and I still ask a bunch of questions. So bring
Well,
that up
especially
too.
with the new sort of refined topography
mhm.
along the
Yeah,
western
great
side.
suggestion.
I see now multiple things that I might consider to be the notch.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
the notch we're talking
The
about is
notch.
not the most obvious notch
Yeah.
on the diagram.
Yeah.
So that's the only reason I bring it up.
Great. Yeah, thank you. Any other concerns to record for the good of the group or good of the process related to the oil and gas well in the notch?
Well, a quick question, because I've driven by it a lot. And the netting goes right past it, so you don't see the notch, right?
Right.
So the existing netting for your facility goes right by it, right?
Yeah.
It's not like the netting goes in and around it.
Oh, no, we do it around the perimeter.
Yeah.
Now, once the landfill is closed, that netting will come down and
Right.
then.
Yeah,
the
that's
notch will
there to
probably
catch
be
the
more
litter.
Obvious.
But it's hard for people driving by to figure out where the notch is.
Mm-hmm, agreed.
Not that you should put a sign
Okay. Anything
No,
else?
no camping in the notch,
Okay.
please.
The other piece was around the water tanks and the, if the permit is expanded into that notch, that little spot on the southeastern side, those water tanks would be relocated. We have discussed that. There are outstanding concerns around if those are relocated, what are the potential impacts to water quality now and in the future? And I'm not the engineer or the water, so that's the best I can do to describe it, but with Dalton, I think you can
I
add
guess
a little bit
that
on the
specific-
process.
Yeah, you know, so I guess we don't specifically have a new update on that one. I guess the good news, at least on our end, is we've been working with Public Works throughout the whole process. So hopefully, you know, it isn't anything new there and it's something that they haven't expressed concern about before. I don't know if David has a better update.
Yeah, well, as I spoke to last month, there are certainly some advantages to relocating those tanks. From a water delivery standpoint, probably not from a water quality standpoint. Those tanks are not deficient currently, and that is a closed system. I did look into state requirements vis-a-vis the oil and gas infrastructure and its proximity to water infrastructure. And while there are extensive regulations about oil and gas production near a water source, a water intake, right? Like say along Boulder Creek or near Carter Reservoir, that's a very well regulated space. No, not near these water tanks. And to think logically about the series of events that would have to happen for those two systems to commingle, you'd need simultaneous undetected leaks in the, say, the crude oil transfer line and the water pipeline. And both those, the water pipeline is going to be under pressure. And so water comes out of it. I don't know how the oil goes in. So you then need the system to be taken offline while the undisclosed leak. I mean, I'm just saying yeah, of course, anything is theoretically possible, but frankly, we've got a lot of water mains near a lot of oil and gas wells here in Erie. And this particular scenario is not a significant concern in my view.
But I think you made a point that some people might not be 100% clear on, that they're storage tanks, they are not
Yeah.
water sources.
Right.
Right. These tanks serve to provide pressure to the system.
And this is the water coming from Big Thompson and all of our other various water projects being pumped
Correct.
into them.
Right,
Um,
they're not sitting on top of a well. It's not being.
It's not
pumped up
Torville
in the-
Springs.
right.
Yeah.
No, that's correct. Water is
Right.
pumped into these tanks and they are at a very specific elevation so that when you turn on your tap, first of all, water comes out, but it also doesn't shoot your faucet off. It's very, very precise engineering that's, again, way outside of my department to deliver the proper water pressure at everybody's spigot there, but also then when you turn on several fire hydrants at once, that there's still water sufficient for that. And that's why we need these very large tanks at specific elevations. And it's nice that we just have ground level tanks. We have the right elevation available. Most municipalities, you see water towers to provide that pressure, and that's a lot more maintenance, a much more expensive piece of equipment than these tanks. And you're never going to get 4 million gallon water tanks up in the air. That's
Didn't you say moving them though, the elevation would be an issue?
Yeah.
or-
It would increase the head pressure, so not significantly, because you're not going up that high. Head pressure basically is 1 pound per roughly 2 feet of elevation for water systems. And to basically quickly address the concern about fire, any fire department has maps on their CAD systems of different water mains, because if you have a major fire, you're going to be tapping off of 2 different mains, because if you're tapping 2 hydrants on the same main, you're reducing your input pressure. So if you have a major fire, you using that map to make sure that the next hydrant you tap is not going to be on the same main as the one you're already hooked to. So these are just to maintain, and like I said, increasing where they're going, it's not going to increase elevation that much, maybe an additional 10 pounds, but there's enough check valves in the system. So like David is saying, you don't get Because normally if they don't put those check valves in, if you live all the way down to the lowest end of Erie, you'd have 110 pounds of pressure coming out of your faucet, which would blow your faucets apart. They try and maintain about 50 to 60 pounds at the delivery source.
So for this, it's, the town is in favor of moving those. There were a couple of reasons that we've talked about in the past.
Newer, more.
Newer, yeah,
More
more
larger.
capacity,
The
more.
current system
pressure.
that
You have
pumps water
gravity.
into them is unique and could be improved.
So let's go down the line here. I mean, with respect to the water tanks and any concerns that we should record in the recommendations, and again, you'll have a chance to look at the recommendations, read them and think about them. Anything else we should include in there before we send that to you all for your review? Thought I saw one of you try to, okay.
We did have one note on the procedure to do this. If
You were done with the topic.
oh, I know. We just want everybody to be aware. So as you
Nice water.
yeah, so you look at my wife's a water engineer. This is what I work on all night. If you look here at this map, the whole landfill property is a section of land. This, where the water tanks are, that quarter section is actually not in the town of Erie right now. And so something that you would see when we actually go to formally submit a PD application would be talking about the process of annexing this quarter section into the town of Erie. And then obviously the land where the water tanks is on town land. We would need to purchase that land. And then obviously there would have to be land provided for so like I said, nothing that really.
Action owns.
Yeah,
They-
exactly.
They're the landowner,
Yeah,
but it's
cool.
currently unincorporated Weld
Yeah.
County. And honestly, regardless of the task force, it would probably be a reasonable idea to annex that into the town anyway. We kind of have a situation right now where the Walmart's in Erie, but the parking lot's in Weld County, and that's odd, given that the entire parcel or the entire section is a Waste Connection. So
Well, and that has been a frequent undertone in a lot of the public comment about Weld County. The Weld County commissioners have denied this project over time. I mean, I think that's going to be a key component to the council taking action on anything we recommend, that town of Erie is going to have to take some positive, affirmative, I should say, steps to incorporate all of this. Otherwise, if we're reliant on Weld County commissioners to approve it, flip a coin.
it'll probably begin with an annexation process, and that process is minimum 90 days, more often half a year, and is very public meetings with planning commission and the town council.
So there's, for those of you who are trying to follow, or just for the benefit of the group, that southeastern quarter of, generally speaking, is within the Weld County boundaries, and the rest is within the town of Erie, and there's a public process to annex that so that it's all on a town, within the town boundaries, so.
We should
Not
actually
to
probably
be
get to work on
overlooked,
that.
but we'll move on and.
I have a quick question. So there's a public process. Is that between just Erie for, like, does Erie have all the power, or do you have to like play nice with Weld County?
It's primarily the landowner.
Okay,
Like
Okay.
if you wanted your home to be in Erie, Weld County wouldn't have the right to tell you, no, you have to stay in Weld County.
okay.
Mhm.
And then do you have the opportunity for rezoning or anything at that point?
Yes, it would have to be zoned
Okay. All right.
during annexation.
Okay, thanks.
This is a slide we have in here to inform you that you've received Vantage Points simulations. We're not going to go through them all because they're not up for discussion. They're Vantage Points that are simulations. So just wanted to share that you have those, the different types of views that you'll get from different areas. But the last piece of our conversation is just to, again, kind of close this loop on the eastern side and consider this recommendation. You've read it before, you read your packet before this meeting. And the eastern side recommendation is not the horseshoe notch. It's not the maintenance yard area, which we've discussed and moved past. Is there anything missing or any concerns or anything to add to this recommendation on the eastern side? And I'm going to read it for the good of the group. Expand, and so, it would read something like the task force recommends or supports expanding the Front Range landfill permitted footprint to include approximately 36 acres in the southeastern quadrant of the Front Range landfill property. With the considerations that visual impacts will be mitigated, visual impacts to the surrounding communities by filling the outside of the permitted area first and moving inwards. And support for relocating the 2 Town of Erie water tanks further southeast on the Front Range landfill property. And as we just discussed, giving the town an easement to use the Waste Connections own land, and then improving the town's water infrastructure by replacing the current water tanks with larger tanks and addressing tank pumping issues. The intent here is to capture the discussions we've had up until now. We just had a discussion around the water tanks and the considerations that go into moving those from an engineering and water quality perspective. Is there anything missing here? This isn't your last bite at the apple, but for in the interest of sending to you something we feel is complete, is there anything missing? And I've said it before tonight already, but the communications piece around the word expansion and the difference between Waste Connections' own property versus what the permitted boundary is, those are things that can be clarified too, that if not clarified could lead to some misinformation. But I think the discussion around here has been good to capture the interest. Yeah. Jeff, for you?
Very briefly.
Okay.
I think the word that we need to encourage everyone to focus on is what Dalton said earlier and what is the correct word, which is it's permitted airspace. It's not, it's basically
lifespan or something.
Yeah, it's basically how high the landfill can be filled.
Well, it actually doesn't make the landfill any taller. It just makes the top wider.
Yes, but that's
also an important consideration.
Yeah.
Is we're not trying to get trash to the moon. So,
but that's my point was that combination of, whether it's wider or narrower, a peak versus a plateau, it's not years. It's not even necessarily volumetric because you can fill it and then wait a couple of years like they did at Denver Regional to settle and then put a little bit more in. It's when it hits the permitted height. And that's what I think people wrestle with, because it doesn't make sense to us when we just buy our lot and build a house on it.
The height will not increase. The lifespan of the landfill will likely go out. Okay.
I think we need to be careful on wording
Mhm.
that we're recommending them to expand. We're not recommending that they expand it. I think we're agreeing with Front Range's request. I was supporting their request to do that rather than we're recommending them to expand the landfill because I don't want to die.
that's a
Supporting the
subtle
request.
but important point.
Yes.
Very good.
I agree.
To increase the permitted footprint. We've gone back and forth on, is that wonky? Will people understand? But yeah, so
It's
you're
Front Range's
supporting their request. Yeah.
We're agreeing that it's
Yep. With these considerations.
Right.
Yes.
Yep. Okay. All right.
That's a good one, Scott. I also am not going to publicly recommend that the landfill expand.
You support the request. Yeah. Okay. All right. Good work. We've come far. The last piece, and maybe this will be funner, is community benefits. And there's a lot that goes into this. We saw a presentation from Waste Connections at our last meeting, August 30th, I think, around the Champ landfill in the St. Louis area and different community benefits that they've invested in and supported there. And the purpose of our discussion today is to review together all the different recommendations that you have all provided for a variety of different community amenities. There's renewable energy and greenhouse gas reduction. We've sorted them into themes. Waste diversion, multimodal trails, and just generally, recreation facilities and infrastructure, outdoor amenities, ecological benefits, and shared space and community partnerships. So some of these overlap a little bit, but for the purpose of the discussion today, we'll go through them, we'll review them together. And these are not items that Waste Connections is committing to right now. And there's some items that are within their normal course of operations that I would say that it's not necessarily that they'll do anyway, but that support what they plan to do. And then there are things that are above and beyond. And the questions will be, does this capture the community's desire and vision for community benefits now and into the future? What's missing, and any additional thoughts? So really, does this capture what you would like council to review when they're saying, well, what can Waste Connections do to honor its commitment to be a good neighbor? Randy, is there anything you wanted to add before?
Just here to answer
Good,
questions.
thank you. You're so ready. I feel like we're finally finding a groove 6 meetings in. Any questions about, just before we get started? I'll spend just a couple minutes running through the slides, but any comments or reflections on anything before we get started?
Just real quickly,
Yeah.
I know we've already thanked Waste Connections, but I just wanted to point out that, I spent a lot of years reviewing landfill stuff as an elected, as a resident. I feel like in the last 8 meetings, I've learned way more about what's going on there and what the options are that helped us inform this than I did in any of the dozens of meetings that I had previously. So, solid work to Waste Connections and Kearns West for getting us to a point where we can have this discussion.
No one was thanking Waste Connections at our first meeting. And not because you all don't try hard and do good work and show up, but my hope is you all, that we feel that, and that the community feels like there is a commitment to this town. Okay. I will assume and trust that you've read all of these. I won't read them all out loud, but the major pieces of this renewable energy and greenhouse gas reduction theme are solar and or wind farm, in just capturing the most methane possible. I would say developing an information center where the public can see the amount of methane captured and how it's used, and then converting as many Waste Connections vehicles to electric or compressed natural gas where possible. And thank you, Erica. That reminds me that the town did have input on these recommendations so that they fit within the context of existing sustainability plans and existing efforts and desires from the town. So there is consistency with the town, and I'll pause and let you. Do you want to add something right now?
No, I
Okay.
think you've incorporated all of our comments and concerns, and so those are included in this high-level summary. And from feedback as well, we had a lot of the same concerns. So you all brought up things that were on our radar, we were thinking about. And again, there will be some time for any kind of proposal that comes from Waste Connections where the town will have a chance to review. But we just wanted to make sure that our highest concerns were incorporated in this, and I believe they are.
And there's some big shifts in how trucks are operated, how energy is captured, and there's a commitment to always be doing more, and a lot of that's captured here. And then there's some smaller things too, like Raptor stands. So it's big picture, it's shorter term, smaller investments. So this does capture a lot.
Do we make comments on those recommendations?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's stop with each. Yeah, go ahead.
I would say we don't include wind farm based on the airports in Erie and balloons and everything else. I don't
I
think
feel like someone else
even
commented.
bringing up
Yeah.
wind farm would make sense.
Agree.
Who, and just to remind me, did someone here, so how do you feel about that, Jeff?
So I would just say, thanks,
I'm
Jeff.
sharing a mic, sorry.
So I would just say that it was a thought because we have a public service facility there that they talked about turning into an energy battery potentially when they originally proposed it. We've got a lot of surface area for solar, and there are ways to do wind farms without the giant Excel wind farms. You can do small cylindrical ones. There are a lot of options that could capture all of the wind blowing over the top of that landfill without being obstructions for other things, or even interfering with the Raptor stands that I like. I think just, and maybe being so specific as to say wind farm is less productive than saying create an area that
Renewable energy.
Renewable energy.
yeah, is a renewable energy
Yeah.
hub
Yeah.
and exposes all possible options for the Front Range.
Yeah.
Randy, how windy is it up there?
windy.
Depends on what time of year. But
It's
yeah,
so-
when you get up onto the top of the landfill, you know, it blows a little bit harder up there than it does around there. But I mean, we've all experienced Colorado winds. You know, one day you can have 2 miles an hour and the next day it could be 90 miles an hour. And we've experienced that before, as we did with the Marshall Fire, places like that. And, but yeah, there's some winds, but what's really unusual about it is, you know, we have a permit condition where we have to close based on the wind miles per hour. And so does Tower Road and Foothills and Dad's. And we are usually the least closed landfill because for some reason where Erie sits coming off the Front Range, a lot of those winds will be deflected around it. I've seen it blow 80 miles an hour at Foothills landfill, and we have 5 miles an hour.
So the interest is really using the finished profile for renewable energy.
Right.
And we're not deciding on what that is when, you know, we're encouraging renewable energy development on the.
And
finished
certainly my
profile.
intention was not the 200-foot Vestas
Yeah.
towers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want Kansas on top of the landfill.
But leaving it open as an option and
Renewable. Kind of a generalized term
Yeah.
that allows for future growth and technology to also take advantage of it, because there may be something we haven't thought of that in 20 years, it's actually, you know, a better use than say solar. I don't know. We don't
And there's a
know.
lot of limitations as to what they can do. They can't sink footings down 20 feet and go through the top seal to put in a big tower or anything like that. So we can put in there renewable if possible and just leave it at that, because anything more specific, they're gonna look at it and go, well, that's not gonna work. And it shoots that right down immediately.
And,
So
but sometimes if something is so vague, it's hard to implement or understand what your intent was. So my question for you all would be, something along the lines of create renewable energy on the finished profile. Does that capture? That's
Yeah, I mean, without getting, I don't want to belabor the point, but you know, if you look at Champ, there's a shared building that is not built on the cap. You could put micro turbines on top of that. I mean, there are, I don't want to preclude
Yep.
options. I think this is a unique opportunity to participate with. We've got oil and gas on site, we've got power on site, we've got recovered energy coming off the landfill. We've got a lot of energy partners on this section that we could partner with.
How does that sound? Yeah. Okay. Michael?
Not quite sure where this would fit in. I was looking for the thing. We were talking about how bad cell phone service is around. And it's something, you know, a future you could recommend that maybe some sort of telecommunications or something. Can you have something like that that makes it onto that? Because that would benefit everybody. Being one of the highest peaks, you probably be able to access greater service that way.
It would still have.
I know
issues
still
with the
footings,
footings,
but
towers.
you know,
footings and
But
wiring.
We don't need to get into the detail, but it sounds like you want better cell service.
I think everybody would.
Yeah. Did anyone not,
Especially
does anyone have
Mr.
Verizon and didn't have? a
Can you
cell
hear me
phone?
now?
Okay.
Then I had a question.
Yeah.
Do you currently use electric or CNG vehicles in your fleet in Colorado? Because I noticed you use them in California.
I know we have them throughout the country and places, and I know that is you know, a process that we're looking at to do and more. We also have other energy opportunities that are coming up all the time between what could be hydrogen down the road, what more electric vehicles, things of that nature. So, I mean, one of the things everybody hears about AI, right? Artificial intelligence is coming so good that a lot of these things are going to be incorporated in how we do vehicles. You know,
But you don't currently have any
I don't believe we
electric or-
have any here in Colorado yet.
Okay.
I could be
Thanks.
wrong.
Yeah, we've trialed them. I don't know the exact number, but Waste Connections has looked at using both. I know for a while they had a partnership with Xcel Energy downtown where they're looking at using an electric truck, but I don't have an exact number. It has something we've looked into. The hard part of the electric trucks in Colorado is the weather. With the cold, your battery, just like your cell phone on a cold day, you know, your battery storage goes down. So I think something we talked about with Erica is what we'd like to be able to do is set up that new shop to where it has the functionality to help service and power those CNG and electric trucks. That way, as the technology progresses and as we get that fleet built up, we have, you know, we're not stuck with a building that was ready for a fleet 20 years ago. It's ready for.
And
modern
having that facility on the landfill would promote that
Mhm.
because we got an energy source right
Mhm.
there. And what I meant is it's not that we haven't been looking at them or trying them. We just don't have like a fleet set up of one specific district that's running maybe 10 trucks.
Like what you saw in
Yeah.
New York.
Yeah.
Well, and I don't go too far because when we're not voting, we're not reaching consensus. We're just trying to capture. But when we do come to in other processes, when we come to agreements, they need to be wise, they need to be implementable, sustainable. I mean, I want to back check this. Does any of this seem just so far off that it's not wise to include it here because it's a commitment that no one can honor?
No, I don't think that's the case. I think what you said when you're trying to narrow down renewable energy, from solar panels or wind farms or whatever, that really is another part of that.
Mhm.
Renewable energy that you can put, looking at all sources to include looking at vehicles, use alternative energy, something like that. It's not, saying this is what we recommend, but we recommend looking at that. And we are in the process of doing that as a company. So no, I don't think that's out of line at all. I think if you can group it in with that piece and just put some parentheses around like this, and this as possibilities, that would get the point across, yeah. But I don't think any of that is not unlikely.
Yeah, thank you, Randy. And just think of a silly example. I don't know, think of something that's maybe, well, I won't go into hypotheticals, but we'll all continue to ask Waste Connections, like, does any of this just sound unreasonable and not something that,
Something I can say too, and we talked about it on the internal call, is I think what Mark even said before is at Champ, they have that working group or whatever it is, a community group. And I think that would be an invaluable thing in this situation of, obviously, if you have X amount of land and X amount of funding, you can't do every single thing on here. So do you form a group that can kind of prioritize what's the best use of the land, your time, your money, all of that kind of thing? Because we don't want to make every decision for the whole community. That,
No.
like you said, there are things that we can logically roll in to the development, and there's other things we'd like to support a community group in undertaking.
and
So-
that's the very last bullet, but maybe
Yeah.
one of the most important ones about next steps. So anything related to renewable energy and greenhouse gas reduction here, that big picture ideas, shorter, longer term actions that you'd like to see captured? Okay. Alrighty, and just noting the change that we'll make to the language, include something around a general renewable energy term and not specific to wind and solar. The second here is waste diversion. So new systems to divert construction waste away from the landfill, compost drop-off site for hard to recycle materials such as mattresses, big bulky items, cardboard, more free drop-off days for Erie residents at the landfill, curbside composting. So again, not within the footprint, but something that might benefit community resident or town residents. And then just the thought around visual impacts and making sure that a new diversion site or implementing any of these doesn't create additional visual impacts.
Well, can we not limit that to visual impact?
Yeah, what's your suggestion? Just
mean, 'cause
impacts?
Adverse
Visual,
impact.
noise, smell.
Yeah.
I mean, composting tend to have a little bit
Oh, got it. Yeah,
differousness. And that is a word, I just made it up, trust me.
we get it. Visual, noise, smell.
I have a question for Randy. You have the free drop off for Erie residents, but those of us that are part of Rancheg Estates and those of us on Road 6 are not Erie residents. So could you include us in that?
I believe most of Ranch Egg has free service anyway.
Okay. And then could you include Road 6 then, since we're going to be,
Well, I think you're already included on it. I have addresses from your homeowners that can come and dump at the landfill, and they've been on that list forever. If you're not on the list, just give me a call.
okay.
That's
okay,
all it is that we've got a list by address.
Okay.
So all you got to do is let me know your name and address when you come show a driver's license.
Okay.
But that's always been a part of the Ranch Eggs agreement, so.
Okay, so for my group on 6, just make sure they are on the list, your list.
Yep.
And then you said when they do show up show their driver's license to prove
Because
that
I
that's
need,
where they reside.
yeah, for the list,
Got
I
it.
need name and address. You can email me the
Okay.
people that you know there or everybody on the list, because I know I've already got some on there.
Yeah, because we've been turned
Yeah.
away before.
Well,
so
and
we weren't
you
on
know,
the
one of
list.
the things that happens, unfortunately, is people will send somebody else with the trash and they can't identify the address. And unfortunately, I can't let them in unless I have the resident with them.
Okay.
You know, and that's all we ask, just
Okay.
because you can get too many other people that know. We've had roofers come in and say, well, yeah, it's coming from this house. We're talking about just regular residential
That makes
garbage
sense.
collector, what you're cleaning up around the yard.
Okay, well,
Yeah,
easy
no
things.
problem.
All right, thank you.
So making sure that, I mean, essentially unincorporated Weld County and other areas have access to free drop-off days. Okay. What, anything else missing here?
I just had a question. So I don't know where the divert construction waste point came from, but I'm just wondering what the context is for that.
My understanding is the perception that a lot of construction waste is just put in the landfill and not diverted, well, obviously diverted, but used for other purposes or repurposed.
Yeah, so I believe in Denver now, there's a ordinance to divert as much construction waste as possible away from landfill to recycling. And
Okay.
there's systems out there where the material handling facilities now can handle more construction waste. And
Got it.
considering the amount of construction we have in Erie, it was a suggestion of mine, maybe not exactly to Waste Connections, but to also encourage more recycling of construction.
Got it. Okay. I love that.
Just a quick note too, that's also included in our sustainability plan from 2019.
Okay.
And the city of Boulder has also adopted a very aggressive construction demolition waste diversion plan.
This is like the tubs, like that kind of construction waste as opposed to like dirt coming off construction sites or.
Actually could be building materials, scraps, things like that.
Okay.
Specifically, cement is really great for reuse, being
Oh,
able to
awesome.
crush
Okay,
that and
cool.
then use it back into street material, things like that.
Awesome.
Do we want to
Thank you.
say and develop new systems to divert construction waste away from the landfill to recycling? Does
Yeah,
that
that'd be helpful.
clarify?
Yeah, because that was just, that was just sort of my reaction to it. That was like divert it to where?
To
I
recycling.
totally get it now and it makes sense.
And I,
Maybe Erica has the right wording from Boulder and Denver and something.
Yeah, it's C&D diversion, construction and demolition. And you could make note similar to Denver and City of Boulder's program.
got it. Other ideas, questions related to this theme here, waste diversion?
I don't know if it came up later, but I thought I had a recommendation about education around this.
I think that's in the shared space and community partnerships,
Of
Wrote that
teaching
down.
people more about the
like
recycling.
a waste diversion center. Yeah, I see it here in the,
Okay,
yeah.
Yep. gotcha.
But when we
Thanks.
get to that, let's talk about that, make sure you're happy with it. So this one's around multimodal trails, so a network of trails, safe crossing points, sidewalks. Just some amenities to provide positive control points and enhance the trails themselves, shade structures, signage, an educational, scavenger hunt, a plan for funding and maintaining these trails. A lot of times trails are not built because there are concerns about maintenance and long-term maintenance. And then we talked about this earlier, plan a connection to the future Erie Parkway underpass. So here, think about, does this imply connectivity? Does it imply different access points and safe access points, and then enjoyment and a full sustainable build out of a trail system here?
And
And-
I actually spoke with Parks and Rec to make sure that this fit in with their overall trail concept and connectivity plan. And by and large it does, but we did miss one crucial connection. And that is basically from coming along County Road 4, the north side, but then extending on past where the tanks could be potentially relocated to. Because there's really no other way to get over there except for across this quarter section here. So just want to throw that one in there. And then otherwise, This multimodal trails has the blessing of our Parks and Rec department.
What was that connection again?
Basically from the intersect or along the north side of County Road 4, but then extending on east over to County Road 7. I've got a map. It's tiny.
You'd think I knew it by heart, but okay. That's kind of, okay, all right, that makes sense.
Remember 6 months ago and we're like, yep, Road 4, Highway 7, Road 7, Road 5, 5 to 6, 6 to 4.
I have
that-
to use my fingers. Yeah.
I have a question. The one part that says include benches, shade structures, the signs and all that. Is that who would be doing that? Okay, so the Town of Erie Parks and Rec? Or how would you have public input on that? Or,
That's
more
a
suggestions?
fantastic question, and that's probably one of the many details that'll have to be actually sorted out.
Okay.
I don't want to speak for Waste Connections. I'm sure they'd be more than willing to help put all of these awesome things together. But obviously, after the landfill closes, a lot of the maintenance is probably going to come to the town. But again, those are details that'll actually be worked out in the proper agreements, I would
But
imagine.
Parks and Rec has a standard, and if you've looked around town recently, you've probably seen a lot of our park signs and open space signs changing to that new sort of lodge construction with corrugated steel. I mean, they have a standard look for all of those things. It kind of started with the dog park and has evolved from there.
Well, even when they're done, Waste Connections will still own the property and have a responsibility to maintain it. So, I
Yeah,
mean,
to
just
some-
because it's closed.
Yeah.
Long after I'm dead, doesn't mean that they'll be absolved from responsibility for maintaining that site. So
Certainly.
I don't worry about that. I'd like to see that first one worded in a way that developing those multimodal trails in a phased-in possibility. So as soon as possible, if we're gonna end that western section and get that closed up, that we start developing and maybe moving that fence line and allowing some of those trails to start being used sooner rather than later. Because if we're gonna wait for the entire thing to close before we have trail access, it'd be a hard sell for a lot of people that just won't get any benefit out of it.
No, and
Yeah,
I think,
that's a good
and I think that's the intention is to look at, you know, it's all based around getting the expansion and filling up that hole to where we continue on that side. But the idea is to get that done and then start promoting those trails on the west and that north corner to incorporate with whatever Westerly might have or over to the other
Sure.
side.
I'd just like to see the verbiage included, so.
Yeah, no, I agree.
You know, because once again, we don't want people looking back later and go, well, what did they mean by this? You know?
Well, and if we do have a community advisory committee or the sort, I mean, it might be an interesting exercise to do some kind of master planning process and not that formalized, but, and then a phased build out of this plan so that, again, connectivity, safe access, you're considering all that, but building out the pieces you can as parts of the landfill are phased out of use.
I wanted to answer one more thing that Scott had brought up. The landfill, and I don't know if you understand this or not, but when the landfill closes, when it's completely closed, we are responsible right now under the law for a minimum of 30 years to monitor and maintain that. In our opinion, that will never go away. I just don't see it. At 30 years, the state has to look at it and take it over and it would go in their hands. If, you know, there's any issues or things that they want to see, they have the ability to extend that. And that would be all the
Interesting, thank you.
infrastructure on the landfill.
Let me pause, Scott. So develop a network of multimodal trails on the Front Range landfill in a phased manner or
Where it's phased in as quickly as feasible. So it's not waiting for complete
Closure.
closing of
Yep.
the landfill before we put the trails in, but
Okay.
phase it in as possible. Like a nice sledding hill on the south side, take that fence out of there, the Vista Ridge kids could go right across County 4 and dodge the trucks.
Ramp over, right, number 4.
Yeah, we need a good sized ramp.
that'd be fun.
Absolutely.
Michael?
Do we need to mention something in here about the potential land swap and the,
Oh.
and getting the land swap land to be incorporated into the open space and trail program as fast as possible as well?
So
that if
support for that 3 acre
Oh.
area.
Correct.
That's a good catch, yeah. Mhm.
And Morgan, I know I had asked about the 2 landfills that are already closed, and I don't know if we can
There's a,
suggest putting stuff on those 2.
Yeah, you're on the task force.
Yeah.
so the northernmost one, the one that's very pyramid shaped, is owned by Republic. And so not much we can do with Waste Connections
Right.
on that, but
But Denver Regional South.
But Denver Regional South, it was my understanding that when it was capped, it wasn't capped considering trail use, et cetera. So I think there'd be some extra work, right, Randy, to look into what engineering it would take. But that's again something that I think could be included in the recommendations.
But yeah, I used,
Explore that as an option and figure out what can be done and what's possible and how quickly we can do it.
right, anything that's on the closed site there, we'd have to do the same thing. We'd have to approach the state with our new plan to get it approved because it's in a closure state. Not that it can't be done.
Yeah.
We just have to go through engineering designs, things like that, submit it to the state.
So that's another good point, though. I mean, I'm on the task force and I still can't keep track of who's in charge of which one of those. And those are the 2 closest to Vista Point specifically. So maybe when we say Front Range landfill, it's clear what we're talking. I mean, obviously it's clear from the map, but
Yeah.
I know a lot of people from my neighborhood and probably Vista Ridge too would ask about
What's
those
the
2.
name of the landfill that's owned by Republic or?
Denver Regional North.
Oh,
North is owned by Republic. Denver Regional South is owned by Waste Connections.
be good in the recommendations to just clarify that? I mean, I don't know if
Yes.
that's our place.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Sure.
Um,
Anybody that stumbled across this document in 5 years.
okay, but what I'm hearing is to Michael, or I think Michael, support, and really what you're doing is you're supporting this. You're expressing the desire and support for that 3-acre area and the land swap to be incorporated into the open space program.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Correct.
And then support for recreational amenities, kind of community benefits on Denver Regional South, owned by Waste Connections, not to be confused, will be more eloquent, but with Denver Regional North, owned by Republic.
It's really close to our existing single track facilities. I think it'd be a nice
Yeah.
addition to
I
the
agree.
overall topographic
It would work.
biking experience that is Erie.
And it could
As-
probably be implemented sooner, right?
Ideally, though, there is concerns, I mean, engineering concerns. The state is obviously does not want that cap, the outer portion of that landfill to a road. And so we'd have to be very thoughtful about building trails, since it wasn't engineered with trails in mind initially. So there's just a bit of work, but yeah, nowhere near completing the Front Range landfill amount of work. So, right.
Real quick, because I know,
Then Jeff, yeah.
yeah, I know you're running out of time.
No,
Okay, under
okay.
outdoor amenities, my recommendation was, well, there's a few of them in here, but develop a 9-hole 3-par.
Oh, sure. We're
Oh, but
not
are
there
we
yet.
gonna run out of time? Are we done at 8?
No,
Oh,
8:30.
8:30.
Okay. Sorry.
No, that's
just
okay.
running out of time.
Yeah, we'll do Jeff and then Sherry and Lisa. Oh.
Go ahead, Jeff.
So the one comment I would make for our recommendations going to the council is that we better define what multimodal is, because I know from time on the board and time with Open Space and Trails Advisory Board that we sometimes think of multimodal as bikes and people, and sometimes it's bikes and people and
Multi-use,
golf
yeah,
carts, and sometimes it's bikes and
scooters.
people and horses. When I used that term, I was referring to it as the trail profile that's along Coal Creek, which is a significant paved portion adequate to support bikers going in multiple directions and crusher fine to support bikes and or horses. I think this area is supremely appropriate for that kind of trail, but whatever trail, and especially considering we've got rural users on the other side.
So I think I'm hearing an non-motorized multi-use trail.
Yeah, I would go as specific as to include horses. I mean, technically our single track trails, our single track routes are designed to support horses as well. All of Coal Creek is designed to support horses. We've got fewer horses in Erie proper, but we've still got a big ranch in Vista Ridge, and there's everything on Sixth.
County.
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
agricultural, so yeah.
And
a
that-
lot of us have
that
horses.
ranch
I
is
mean,
for
it's
sale.
designed to support
front part so far.
equestrian use.
I wouldn't say non-motorized because a lot of people have electric bikes.
Those are
technically.
non-motorized.
Well, it just depends on how
They're,
you,
they're in statute, they're
Colorado
non-motorized.
allows
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
I wrote that bill. Fun fact, ask me later. So I can talk all day, but I'm not a water engineer, but I can talk all
That's-
day about that.
8:35, that conversation.
No, but I hear you want, you want access to electric bicycles, the low-speed electric bikes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Please, you say paved, you mean concrete paved or other?
Concrete paved.
Okay.
Yeah.
The only reason I ask around off the landfill, concrete I don't see being an issue. On the landfill, it's not ideal. I'm not saying it couldn't be done, but the landfill
No,
settles.
And good clarification. I mean, the way it's incorporated around Coal Creek Trail is that the connector trails, the spine trail is David or anyone else on staff, correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's either 6 foot or 8 foot concrete pave sidewalk with 3 foot crusher fine to the side. And OSTAB years ago sort of accepted, and don't quote me on the exact numbers, but the general profile, that is the connector trail. And then if you get into single track is cut in single track dirt because the terrain doesn't
Got it,
support
yeah.
concrete there.
Okay.
So consistent with the Coal Creek, consistent with the Coal Creek Trail
Yeah, I
design?
think in my
would
very
you all-
verbose answer, I used Coal Creek as the example.
Yeah.
And I do have to say that what we're doing today, that's a testament as far as the horse trails, because I actually served on the open space committee for CSAP. That was what, like 25 years ago? And yay, right on. That's still going. So any of the stuff that we do could be in the next 30 years, but somehow, some way, we're making a big difference.
Yep.
So.
Sherry?
I think our recommendation should be a little bit more general related to the connectivity.
Mhm.
Right now, it's only reference to the Erie Parkway underpass, but it should connect with Coal Creek Trail System, any other regional trail system.
Yeah, including Coal Creek, Erie Parkway, and not,
Oh, yeah, westerly, the Erie Highlands.
Yeah, and
ones.
I
just
think
with a
it's
mind
covered in the
to,
third bullet point, isn't it?
yeah, I think I'm just seeing a lot of edits around just the general intent of connectivity and safety and consistent with other trail infrastructure and then.
Well, I'm probably just tying things together because I think we get
Yeah.
an earlier version via email than we see on the slides here. So
Oh, I'm sorry about that.
no,
Yeah.
it
Okay.
happens, but I think that's just tightening up the language.
Yeah.
Lisa, what was your comment?
So,
And then Eric, I see
the
you
third
too.
bullet, the only thing that I've heard from Erie Highlands neighbors is developing a bike route along CR5. And the
Absolutely.
connection, and it says develop sidewalks along those roads, and I'm wondering if it should say sidewalks and bike paths.
Yeah, it'd be a full spine trail down CR5.
Okay, but-
Speaking to parks, right?
But you'd like that clarified in
I
there.
just think,
Yeah,
I
I
think you
would
could
too.
clarify bullet 3,
Yeah, good call.
because that would be a place that I think our neighbors would notice.
100% agree, because I've heard that from some of my neighbors, that they love to ride their bikes down and they hate that section because it's, even though it's 45 and 35,
It's a straight
my neighbor across the street just got pulled over doing 55 into 35. It
Erica?
happens.
Just a gap that I'm recognizing in this, and I think it's an assumption already, but you might just want to clarify for people years from now. I don't see accessibility specifically being called out.
Great.
So if you
point.
guys are in favor of that, I think it would be worth adding in for future reference.
accessibility. yeah.
Yes.
Erica, is that
ADA.
not disagreeing? Is that something that's already covered under plan developments, under,
Within the municipal code.
yeah, like within code? Is it already part of it that when, when I'm being very specific, but I also recognize
Sometimes
that
it
we don't want
depends
to
on
be
where
so
the funding
specific
is
that
coming
we
from.
pen ourselves in. Like, would that be part of UDC that sidewalks need to be ADA compliant in the future or something? I don't know.
Regardless, I don't think it hurts to call it out
Okay,
here,
cool.
especially since this is a private property.
Good point.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And you guys could make some type of recommendation, where possible, where it meets the needs and the desires of the land use, something like
No,
that.
I think it's a great point that, yeah, we're talking a lot about bikes and not a lot about
Yeah.
Wheelchair.
We will be inclusive.
And
Right.
universal
That's
access and
inclusivism.
consistency with ADA
Yeah.
regulations. So just to, we'll better define multimodal. We'll add in the phasing piece, phased in as quickly as feasible. We'll give some examples, Coal Creek, Erie Parkway, connectivity. There's the connection along the north side of County Road 4 east to County Road 7. Support for integrating the 3-acre area from the line swap into the open space program. And not just sidewalks, but bike paths and bicycle access, the accessibility and the universal access. Looking at my notes here, so this will look a lot different when it comes to you later this week. It'll be refined based on our discussion. Is there anything else just thematically and intent-wise or specific suggestions here that you'd like to include? Okay. That was a good discussion. Thank you. Okay. All right. And outdoor amenities, Cheryl, you'll.
There we go.
So let me summarize real quick. So some of these are fun. Dark sky areas, well, they're all fun. At dark sky areas at both the closed and the landfill in operation, a viewing point for the public to watch, landfill shifting over time, a 9-hole 3-par golf course, a sensory park, bus parking for special education programs, a sledding hill. So again, certainly not a catch-all, but a variety of different suggestions here. And,
One thing I want to clarify, the 9-hole 3-par pasture golf course. So natural vegetation. I don't want to put in one more water hog
We
for golf
couldn't
course.
anyway. You can't put water on top of it.
So yeah, if I don't know whether, I don't know what the proper verbiage is, but
was
Ju-
this yours?
I'm-
Was this yours, the 3?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Pasture golf course?
yeah. So
Okay.
it's, the vegetation is left the way it is, almost like the
Mhm.
Frisbee golf course,
Mhm.
but it's just a 3-par golf course.
Okay.
So
Okay, I've made that edit. Thank you, Cheryl.
What
Chris?
is the first bullet point?
A dark sky area, like just really minimizing light pollution in the area so that you have better star and
Oh,
solar system observation.
Pretty small area to make it.
Yeah.
yeah.
Just to add to that too, Christina, since you asked.
Oh,
So that is a goal that the Sustainability Advisory Board has, is looking at dark sky designation for the entire town at some point. So as we're working on procuring our streetlights, and we can actually direct light in a way that doesn't interfere with wildlife and kind of that stargazing, dark sky
Okay,
culture.
nice.
We could go the opposite direction. If you guys have seen that pyramid in Las Vegas.
the other thing too is
Just helping us understand.
We've got options. and stuff.
the develop a sensory park and bus parking, that was another one of mine. And I guess that would just kind of be part of the ADA then, right? For the trails?
What is a sensory park?
A sensory park, that's where, for example, children with autism have different sections that what might be their thing, like I don't know how to describe it. Colin, how do I describe this?
I can explain it.
Go ahead, Randy.
Autistic children have different sensory perceptions that they tend to go to. We have a autistic grandchild that is severely autistic. So he carries around things. He's always got to have his hands moving. Some kids don't need to have that much sensory, but they like the way things feel, the way things sound, the way things look, which is a different perspective than what we normally think
Yeah,
of.
yeah, their
And
thing.
so a park like she's talking about would be available to have areas where different types of special needs kids could have things that are sensory oriented to help with them have a good day.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I think,
Because I've subbed a number of times when, because my daughter teaches in Ariel and she is a high needs, nonverbal autism teacher. And the children just get thrilled just to get in the school bus. So because she has to prep lesson plans around it for them to prepare for that transition. And yeah, I mean, it's not a far drive. And if you can do it specifically for the sensory part for those students, it means the world. Because it's really hard to incorporate them into like the rec center swimming pool, you know, with their needs. So.
Interesting. Well, I think that, thanks for letting me know.
I was gonna say, I don't support a golf course recommendation. I just don't, I can see so many hazards from golf balls flying onto all those roads. I'm a golfer myself, 9 holes, just, I don't think we need another golf course and I wouldn't support a recommendation. I think
And there are questions about, long-term maintenance.
So
where
it would,
where
you
whose
know, what I said
responsibility.
earlier about something wise, within the context of all these recommendations, Cheryl, what I'm hearing is there's not support here. So if you want to spend some time helping us understand where you're coming from, whether that represents kind of the community, or if you want to strike it, we can.
Well, my husband is a golfer. I am not. So I was kind of winging that recommendation. Just
These things aren't weighted either. And so if something has equal weight over trails or, diversion and waste divert, do we want to add energy to this recommendation over others? And I'm not trying to steer you in it, but I'm not hearing support. And so our option is either to talk through it and refine it or to strike it.
I'm good with striking it. Sorry.
And he's right here, so.
I'm looking right at him.
Okay, you're comfortable with that, Cheryl?
Well, I mean, no comment from the public right now.
Okay,
Write it down.
all right, well,
So, yeah, because as
it's a
if I'm
harder one to imagine.
yeah, because if I'm understanding you correctly, you're saying that these recommendations are going to be weighted and
Eventually, not
yeah,
today.
eventually. And I would be more than happy to sacrifice that recommendation for a sensory park.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, okay.
Well, and
Sherry, yeah.
what I was gonna say, Lisa, I agree with you, but I was gonna compliment sandwich it and say, what I like about the sensory park is I think that really pairs well with the notion of some kind of shared space. And spoiler alert, we'll get to this in a couple of slides, but working with SVVSD, working with other regional partners, I think there's a great opportunity, like the greenhouses in the apiary at Champ, to build those kind of things into the shared spaces.
Okay, yeah. Maybe it will happen in the future. It doesn't sound like it'll end up in these recommendations, and you're comfortable with that? The golf course?
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
golf
Yeah.
course. Yeah.
All right, anything else on outdoor amenities? We'll move on.
Oh, Frisbee,
Oh.
sorry. I'm reading sign language behind them. What about, could we instead recommend another Frisbee golf course?
Adding support for a potential Frisbee golf
Yeah.
course.
Yeah.
And then will there be a bathroom somewhere or?
Yeah.
Like.
Let's add that to the,
Thank you. That's
The-
a great idea.
under
Benches.
multimodal trails, just the benches, shades, and just like facilities. Yeah. I think it goes without saying, but Frisbee golf, I
think that makes a lot more sense than.
I can
an
picture that a
actual
little bit
golf
more.
course because.
A lot less
that
maintenance
is,
involved.
Foot traffic, no golf carts, no, maintenance of watering and other things like that that you could,
Yeah, they
actually
can be a little bit
incorporate
more
into
wild.
That would be
Mhm.
reasonable use on a hill, because that's what, it's a giant hill, right? Versus a golf course. I don't know, how do you do it on a giant hill?
Okay.
I don't disagree. I would, my caveat would be that anything we do, I feel like our recommendation should be that anything like that might involve lots of people driving out to the location in cars or bikes, whatever, be incorporated with the Sunset parking lot that the town just built, because building more parking lots along there is sort of counter to all of our goals of let's try
Yeah.
to keep traffic off of it. So, I mean, there's a nice parking lot there that can accommodate horse trailers and all sorts of stuff. That should probably be sort of like the base of operations for all activities out there. And then it becomes incumbent upon Parks and Rec and Public Works to figure out if that parking lot is adequate to support the suggestions.
So
and
in
needs.
the in-depth planning phase for this, just consideration to how people get there, parking incorporation with existing facilities. Okay.
I mean, I just worry about anything that's gonna pierce the liner. So you're talking about
Sorry,
putting
your what?
anything, like if you put a disc golf basket in, you're gonna pierce something in the surface. That's why, I think talking about putting in poles or anything else that disturbs what they've done to close the landfill just has concerns to me.
So the apiary thing? would be
Well, I think
covered, or
that's a good general concern around
like
Well,
the raptor.
thoughtful,
9 holes would be all over.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I made a note with, this needs to be, can't think of the right words right now, other than like, it can't be done in a vacuum, and there are considerations to, this is on a landfill. It's not on a, virgin piece of land. So I made a note to that.
I think we've looked at different options for Denver Regional South or other closed landfills. And I think an important thing to note is, like you said, you have to have the proper engineering controls, but there are certain scenarios where you'd have above liner ballast, if you will. So like a concrete
Mhm.
pylon type thing, and you could mount a raptor stand or frisbee golf. So are you gonna get a cell tower that's 100 feet tall? Probably not, without some sort of piling system. So I think you're right. We'd want to do something that the state agrees would be compatible with that final cover type system, so.
That would look something in the recommendations, like, the task force recommends careful consideration of just co-use or co-locating this on a landfill and the appropriate measures. So these are ecological benefits: apiary, greenhouse, native grasses and flowers to support pollinators, raptor stands, goats for, weed management, managing vegetation, working with the butterfly pavilion, butterfly garden. So,
We got goats.
oh, good.
Yeah.
So there's goats already.
We'll take them out there.
Support for more goats. Anything missing here? I mean, this is, again, ways to incorporate some beneficial uses using some parts of the closed landfill. Anything that's missing? Any questions, clarifying concerns?
Is the landfill comment thing on the website gonna still stay open so that as people, after if they watch this on YouTube or whatever, if they start to have questions, or comments, they can still participate and communicate with you guys?
That's a nice thought as an ongoing public process
Yeah.
here. I think that might be a question for Gabby, and I won't put her on the spot right now, but we can note that. And the interest there is just making sure the public has a ongoing way to provide. And this will all go before council in the next few weeks too, and that's another process by which the public can comment.
Would it be helpful to say something in here about like communicating with the Colorado Parks and Wildlife to discuss if they have any recommendations on, for ecological or wildlife benefits on a big, parcel like this?
I don't think it hurts to just encourage that coordination.
We could reintroduce wolves.
It could- Yeah.
Thanks,
Habitat.
Jerry.
They'll take care of the goats.
So communications with CPW and any other state or federal agencies around ecological benefits, just support for just the
No,
open
I'm not-
communication. Jeff?
Well, I wonder if
Right now.
it would be worth recommending to the council that they consider a process similar to Erie Community Center Phase 2. That was not necessarily writing the big check to design concepts, but there were public meetings where Parks and Rec talked about the different options. There were open houses where people were able to talk about it. I mean, we're talking about a geographic footprint that's much bigger than the
Yeah.
community center. It might be worth suggesting that in addition to all these kind of things, maybe these are feeder concepts and there is a more public process before we determine a final plan with Waste
Well,
Connecticut.
and if there's anything else around this ecological benefits, you have the slide in front of you, so
Yeah.
holler, but none of this, these are all ideas with different financial considerations. It's some of the items that, Waste Connections has on their radar and is very open to because it's easy to wrap their heads around, and others require more community input. And just, again, Cheryl, the ongoing public input into this process. So that last bullet here is form a community advisory committee, some kind of committee to track progress on implementing recommendations, share future Front Range landfill plans, discuss current and future community issues. And like maybe a fourth piece there is as a way to reflect community interests in an ongoing manner. So that's something you've all suggested throughout this process. Waste Connections has also suggested it. This can't end here.
Well, and because this isn't open space, it doesn't necessarily fall
There's a lot
fall
more to
under
consider, yeah.
OSTAB's purview.
And it's
So
easy to say build a
it's in a
trail,
bucket.
but there's years of planning.
And it's also private property versus the community
Yeah.
space being public property.
Yeah.
Very good point.
So other things here, meeting space education center. Again, we mentioned in partnership with the school district, with some educational programs on just landfill operations and other sustainability topics, field trips, long-term education and tours. We all loved our tour, I think, and thought there should be more incorporating the town's mining history into some of the resources and interpretive resources, bicycle donation program. So again, all over the place in a really good way. This was a helpful brainstorming exercise, and how this looks and how it's phased and funded and maintained is a future conversation, hopefully captured by the Community Advisory Committee. So again, on the previous slide, ecological benefits, and then this one, does this capture items you'd all like to see be considered in the future? Yeah.
Real quick on the first bullet point, and this is probably more for Waste Connections than for our recommendations. I think as any sort of community meeting space develops, I would really encourage you guys to talk to Extraction, to talk to whatever Crestone's called, since they've got the hub across the street, Civitas.
Extraction's called Civitas.
Thank you. I mean, we've got so many energy partners and water partners on your section that, I think SVVSD is an easy one because they have shown a history of building collaborative working spaces, but man, there's so many people who could help defray costs and, would love to put their name on the wall.
Well, and
We have
also-
relationships with all this company.
Yeah.
Also, does the meeting space necessarily have to be at the landfill? It could be somewhere else in the community that's more accessible and keep people, like we talked about, we don't need a lot more cars and parking there.
True.
So maybe it's just part of a community effort to build that education piece in
Yeah.
conjunction with another facility in town.
So
Yeah, I
potentially
think that'd be a
offsite.
great idea to collaborate with the local citizens, the town, as to where that might be an opportunity where it would best fit. I mean, there's, next to the school, or you could have the school run some programs like they do at Champ. There are a lot of different things, but I think just getting the basics down on this, because a lot of this is going to have to go through negotiating with other people and how this is going to work out. But I think they're all good recommendations, and I think they can all be worked on without any problem. And you're right, collaboration's great.
Yeah, and including like the Erie Historical Society as far as the mining history.
There's so many partners, we couldn't list them all right
Yep.
now, but just an openness to partnerships and learning from others. Lisa?
So I read your sustainability reports for Waste Connections. That's where I brought up the bicycle donation program. And I don't know if you actually do that already locally, but I'd love to know more about it. And if you do it locally, because that would be a great way, as we talked earlier about more bike paths, to kind of make that connection to kids in the community that
Do a
don't have
bike
them.
build every year throughout all of our company. And it's around Christmas time. We put hundreds and hundreds of bikes together in the local community, and they're given away. But yeah, we already have one program like that. Doesn't mean we can't explore other options too.
Are those new bicycles or are they
Brand new
refurbished?
bicycles.
Oh,
brand
okay.
new.
I mean, what about incorporating a point where kids can, that kids can contribute in rebuilding stuff rather than keeping it, like keep it out of the landfill and they can rebuild.
So there, and that's a good point about partnerships too,
Yeah.
because Community Cycles within the county does that
Yep.
already, and
Yeah, you
I'm
could,
sure
you
they'd
could
be
reach out
open.
to Erie Cyclery, right in Old Town here, see if they're
so
interested. in-
looking at this, any big pieces that are missing or that anyone here on the task force takes issue with, can't support?
Maybe with the bicycle donation program, expand that to have bicycles available at the bike path thing, whatever we call it, the
Bike share?
multimodal trails for people who either live in an apartment and don't have a place to keep a bike, or kids who don't have a place to keep a bike or whatever, that might want to be able to come and use it, you know, sometimes, but don't want to have a bike, don't want to maintain one. Would it be possible for you to have like a dozen or 20 bikes in a facility that they could check them out, ride them? And I mean, I know that involves manpower, but is that a possibility that you would look at?
I think as long as it's, you know, when we're coordinating all these different opportunities, those are things that could be coordinated with it, because it may take a little bit of manpower to do a couple of things, and that could still be a part of it. But I think, yeah, the recommendation and looking at it's not a problem at all. You know, we're a big part of communities everywhere doing these bike builds, both for children and handicapped children, people with special needs. We work throughout the country doing that.
I would like to suggest one more recommendation, and that is that the town consider funding from nonprofits, maybe the Colorado lottery system to help fund some of this, some grants, anything that might be used to defray costs on interested parties here.
So maybe on the agenda for the Community Advisory Committee is to explore funding options, GoCo and other
Yeah.
other foundations or trusts. Yeah. Okay, I noted that. Thank you.
We've got an active grants department. We'll get them on it.
Just, does somebody from the town, are you part of a TMO or do you not have a transportation management organization? Like, cause Smart Commute goes up to Broomfield and Smart Commute, I'm on the board there and we're building bike lockers throughout Broomfield and Adams County. Are you, I
That's-
don't think you're part of Smart Commute,
I
are
don't
you? But
believe
do you
so, but
have a,
I'll reach out to John and check on that.
cause I don't know if you're part of the Boulder Transportation Management Organization?
No, because
Yeah.
we're not in an RTD taxing district.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other, so I'm just noting partnerships in general, like
Yeah.
we're all brainstorming ways to get funding, ways to get resources, share programs, expand programs. But I'm just getting anxious about time. Anything else before we go into next steps, Randy?
Before you close, I have a few things I would like to address.
Okay.
the task
We'll let you have the last word here. Anything else, or for this piece, anything else from the task force? Is that a thumbs up or I want to, okay, oh,
Hey,
okay.
okay.
Okay. Great. I like going slide by slide. I think that helped us kind of pick apart and improve these themes. And Randy, go ahead.
I just want to take the opportunity to thank all of you for participating in this task force. I've been doing this for 41 years in the trash business, and I've been in front of public meetings. I've been to many for expansions. I've been for all different kinds of things. And this is the first time that I've worked with a task force that was put together with intelligent, sound-minded individuals that really took, you know, the heart of this there, to have an open mind, right? You know, I know Scott, you said earlier that you may not always like landfill, but you know, I'm really commending you on taking the approach that there's an opportunity here to make better for the community and for the landfill to be a part of that community. And I really appreciate that. It took a lot of courage to sit where you guys are today, as Scott mentioned too earlier. But I appreciate it very much. And you guys have worked well together. We have a lot of great recommendations in here for us to look at and to be able to work with the town council, to work with neighbors, the rest of the community. I just think it has been a fantastic opportunity, and I am very, very impressed at how well this worked out from day one to this point. The last thing that I would like to say is I offer my services at any time to any of you, whether it's in a subdivision, HOA, to have a meeting to discuss with concerned residents. I do slideshows. I'd be there to talk, to answer questions, whatever it may be that would help with what you think might be a part of this long-term approach. So again, thank you very much for your time, because it is very much appreciated.
I'll echo everything that Randy said from the town's point of view.
To you guys.
Absolutely. I think you guys serve as a model for future occasions where the town of Erie is facing difficult, controversial decisions, to have trust and faith in its residents.
We're all gonna come back.
Yeah, next up is a single hauler. I'm gonna stick with trash on this one. No. No, fantastic. I agree with everything Randy said. And of course, encourage your neighbors, if they have questions and comments, they can reach out, of course, always to Randy, but also to their local government as well.
And Morgan, thank you and your staff for everything. You
yeah.
did a wonderful job as well.
Well, I'm not done.
We're not quite all done.
I just think it's all.
Yeah, it was really hard work, and I really love this work, and I love puzzle pieces that are all in the air, and then just bringing out the best in you all and these intelligent conversations to put that puzzle together. And again, the focus was on process, and hopefully we facilitated a process that made you feel heard and made the public feel seen and heard as well. And it was just a lot of hours and a lot of emails, I know, and a lot of things to read and a lot of just people to talk to and bring all that energy and emotion and positions back. So next steps, and thank you, Randy, that was just taking the time to say those things. Appreciate it. Yeah, twice we called you intelligent. I think it's so there's a quick turnaround. We gave you a heads up last week. We asked you to kind of set aside time this week to read the recommendations, and we're just at the behest of the town council schedule, and I think it'll work out. But what happens is Colin and I will finish drafting the recommendations. They're almost there, and we made a lot of changes today. We're committed to doing that tomorrow. We've set aside time. And then we'll send that to the landfill task force by October 3rd, end of day Thursday, hopefully earlier, but giving ourselves some time to allow the town and Waste Connections to review that first. We'll send it to you all on the 3rd. We ask for your review and your comments by the 9th. We'll have a shared document. We ask that people make track changes and comments in there. If there's anything that needs a discussion, I or Colin will call you and we'll try to resolve it. And if we don't resolve something, we'll note it in the recommendations. There's space there to say we did not resolve this. We worked really hard, but there's an outstanding concern. So don't hold back. It benefits Waste Connections, the town, this task force, to note where there are disagreements and where there are outstanding pieces. Our intent is to make sure everything's buttoned up, but you don't need to sign off. You have the ability and the right and just the wherewithal to go in and say, this doesn't sit well and this is the reason why, and that will benefit council in the process and the residents of this town. So the packet goes to council by the 11th. David will submit that.
It goes to the clerk's office.
Sorry.
And then there's
Thank you. All right. It's out of our hands on the 11th. And that's what's driving our schedule. And then the 22nd is when council meets.
What time is that meeting?
The meeting starts at 6:30. This item, there's probably a fairly lengthy budget conversation first. So this item probably won't come on until around 9 o'clock. And that might be being optimistic.
And
Nothing controversial about budgeting, right?
Who's presenting the recommendations?
well, that's
to the council?
That's the last piece.
he asked, David will present. I've just asked Jeff if he'd be willing to present on behalf of the task force. That's open for discussion too. So if there's anyone else who would like to kind of nominate yourself to speak here in front of council and act as the voice of the task force, speak now and we'll kind of deliberate that. But I think Jeff has a level of comfort in sitting here, and I just want someone who is, I don't want to impose on anyone either.
I'm not available on the 22nd, so.
Oh, you're out.
I just
Yeah.
was wondering who's going to present our ideas.
I think it best comes from you. And any and all of you that are available to attend that meeting, not only as residents and members of the public, but to potentially answer questions from the town council. This meeting is just informative. The council isn't making any determinations or decisions. It's just to hear your recommendations from you. This give you a chance to explain what your intentions were, what the results were, what this process was. And then, of course, those recommendations are really for Waste Connections to incorporate into their operations and into future land use permits that come before the town council. So
Are you still willing to sit? And this is a healthy conversation. Would anyone like to kind of throw your name in the hat or kind of co-present? I mean, we're open to any
if we don't have to be there till like 8 o'clock at least, yeah, I can do that.
I'll be there for moral support. You can bet on us.
I'll be happy to help if you'd like. Well, and I think anyone who wants to,
Mhm.
you know, I think the council hearing from multiple people, seeing some of the representative faces is good. But I also think they've kind of put their faith in town staff and Kearns West and Waste Connections to propose this. So I would say, don't rearrange your lives, but if you have time, I'll echo what David said, though. I've sat through budget meetings and there's a good chance this is gonna be 10 o'clock, 10:30.
Could be a late one. I
Yeah.
can't guarantee what
Let
they'll
me
do.
just say, it's optional to attend, like.
Yeah.
This is the first reading of the budget, not the actual adoption, but
Oh, good.
you never know.
Lots of questions.
So optional to attend. I think it would be nice to have one task force member share and answer questions on anything. Jerry, anyone who hasn't spoken up, any concerns?
I'll be there.
Okay.
I mean, is the presentation on every point we've discussed over the past 6 meetings?
I think we've got 30 minutes,
Oh.
maybe 45 minutes. So it'll be a sort of an overview of the process and a summation of the recommendations. Obviously, the full recommendations will be given to them as a written report, fully detailed and fleshed out. But the purpose of the presentation and discussion is mostly just to sort of talk about the process and a broad overview.
Yeah,
Then I think just one presenter makes a lot of sense in that
the,
case.
the typical flow for this kind of thing would be that they've got the detailed packet. There'll be a brief PowerPoint. And then they'll go down the dais and each person will give their 2 cents worth and
Right.
ask their questions.
Okay. I would really like to get a picture of all of you. Does it? No?
Photoshop
Okay.
it. No, I'll be in it.
Okay,
Just saying, just
okay,
make me
thank
look
you,
fun.
thank you so much. Congratulations on doing this work together.
I presume the
No.
challenge coins came from town staff?
Gabby handed those out to you all. I believe there's an anniversary
Gabby?
this year. and-
Thank you.
Yep.
This is awesome. I love it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. This meeting's